Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. It's QC here. Today we're diving into a seriously intriguing My Hero Academia what if scenario. What if Deku was Toji Fushigiro's reincarnation? Part 2. If you love AU fanfics and seeing our favorite heroes in a whole new light, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story. Let's set a little goal. Can we get 52 likes on this video? I know this community can do it. Alright, grab your earphones and let's jump into this wild new version of Deku's journey. The forest sprawled wild and deep, far from the city's light. UA's buses rumbled up winding mountain roads, headlights splitting the darkness as rain whispered through the pine needles. The summer training camp was supposed to be a sanctuary, somewhere safe to grow strong, to laugh, to remember what it was to be young. But every student felt the unease in their bones. The League of Villains had not been seen since the night of the raid, but their memories stalked the edges of every lesson, every game, every promise of safety. The first days passed in a haze of exertion, quizzes and obstacle courses, midnight's jokes, Aizawa's stern corrections, sweat and laughter bleeding together under a watchful sun. At night, the air turned restless, and even the bravest students cast glances into the shifting woods. Izuku moved among them, quiet and patient, hands folded behind his back as he completed every drill. Even here, in the wild, his presence seemed to tilt the world. Class 1A gravitated around him, drawn by gravity they didn't understand. Bakugo threw himself into every exercise, desperate to close the gap. Uraraka tried to draw Izuku into late-night stories by the fire, but always stopped just short, words lost in the hush that followed him. The teachers watched, too. Aizawa kept a silent tally. Vlad King whispered with Mandalay, their eyes darting to Izuku's shadow. Even the wild pussycats, for all their bravado, kept a cautious distance. On the fourth night, the world broke open. The attack came swift and merciless. Smoke grenades burst between the trees, blue fire licked up the trunks, and Nomu howled in the dark. Villains surged from the woods, faces masked, voices hungry. Kirishima screamed, rallying classmates. Zero swung through the trees to get help. Mandalay's voice boomed over the mental link. Everyone, stay together. Get to safety. Izuku watched the chaos unfold, heart steady. He felt the curse inside him surge, cold and luminous. A tide rising to answer the night's call. He moved. Villains crashed through the brush, Spinner's blade gleaming, Magna's laughter splitting the dark. Twice tried to box him in, clones multiplying. Izuku slid between them, a ghost in green, every step measured, every strike unstoppable. A villain lunged, knife flashing. Izuku caught his arm, pressure blooming at the joint. A clean snap, the attacker dropped, silent. He kept moving, dismantling threats with surgical precision, never lingering. His classmates, scattered and terrified, glimpsed him only as a blur, a promise of safety streaking through the dark. Elsewhere, Bakugo squared off against a mountain of muscle, muscular, grinning, hunger in his eyes. I want the strong one, Muscular growled, teeth bared. But I'll take you first. Izuku landed between them before Bakugo could shout. Muscular saw him, and something ancient in his brain screamed danger. He fainted, swinging a fist thick as a boulder. Izuku blocked it with an open hand. The impact thundered, shockwaves rippling through the forest floor. Muscular's grin died, bones creaking beneath Izuku's grasp. He tried to pull away. Izuku tightened his hold, face calm, eyes lit with a cold, otherworldly light. Go, Izuku said to Bakugo. Help the others. Bakugo's pride warred with relief, but he obeyed, sprinting into the trees. Muscular bellowed and attacked with everything he had, but Izuku moved through him, each blow absorbed, returned, diffused until Muscular staggered back, chest heaving, terror shining in his eyes. Not worth it, Muscular muttered, stumbling into the dark. He's not worth it. Across the battlefield, villains whispered and fled when they saw Izuku. The Nomu, programmed for violence, hesitated at the edge of his shadow, uncertain. By dawn, the camp smoldered. Injured students gathered in the clearing, bloodied but alive. Aizawa checked heads, eyes searching, always returning to Izuku. He found him standing at the edge of the trees, untouched, watching the smoke drift upward. Classmates clustered behind him, their fear and gratitude twisting into something more complicated. Awe, suspicion, Dependence. Mandalay whispered to Tiger, "He's not like the others. He's more than a student." Tiger nodded, voice grave. "He's the line the villains couldn't cross." As the sun rose, painting the ruined camp in cruel light, everyone knew the truth. No matter how many wolves came for them in the night, as long as Izuku Midoriya stood at their side, the darkness itself would hesitate. The ruins of the forest camp still steamed at sunrise, the last embers smoldering under the dew. Medics rushed through makeshift tents, tending wounds, whispering names, counting losses. But where most students were pale and shivering, Izuku Midoriya stood at the tree line, unmarked, untouched, staring into the dawn as if listening for something only he could hear. Word of the attack spread faster than the news vans could drive. Headlines blazed with tales of carnage, terror, and, most of all, a single, silent student who had moved through fire and fury without pause or pity. The heroes watched him now, not as a child, but as a force. Gran Torino arrived at noon, his cape dusted with city grime, his face carved in old, tired lines. He skipped introductions, calling Izuku aside before anyone else could approach. They walked the charred edge of the woods in silence, dew and ash crackling beneath their feet. Birds watched from above, silent, wary. "You're not surprised to see me," Gran Torino finally said. Izuku shook his head. "I knew someone would come." The old hero grunted, studying him the way a craftsman might study a strange and dangerous tool. "You moved like you'd been fighting monsters your whole life. Not even All Might was that cold, kid." Izuku looked out over the blackened trunks, hands loose at his sides. "I don't feel cold. I just do what's necessary." Gran Torino narrowed his eyes. "Necessary, huh? That's a dangerous word. Most pros can't even say it." A breeze drifted through the camp, stirring ash. "Show me," Gran Torino said, voice sharp. "Attack me." Izuku hesitated, then moved. To any observer, it was over before it began. A feint, a sweep. Gran Torino ducked, but Izuku was already behind him, fingers at his collar, the air shimmering with energy that pressed against the very shape of the world. Gran Torino twisted free with a cackle, landing on a branch. "Faster than you look. But you hold back. You're always holding back." Izuku nodded. "I have to." Gran Torino dropped down, landing with surprising softness. "I've trained power before, kid, but never like yours." He tapped his chest. "You're not the next All Might. You're something new. Maybe something worse." Izuku's lips twitched, a shadow of a smile. "Or something better." Gran Torino studied him, the weight of his years pressing in. "You could become a monster or a legend. It'll be your choice. Don't let fear make it for you." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "The old heroes are scared of you, Midoriya. Some want to use you. Some want to end you. Don't let them decide your story." Izuku nodded, gaze distant. "Thank you, Gran Torino." A long silence stretched, thick with unspoken warnings. The old man grinned, sharp and knowing. "If you ever need a teacher who won't flinch, you know where to find me. Until then, show them what a real hero is. Show them all." Gran Torino vanished into the trees, leaving Izuku alone with the rising sun and the hush of new legends in the air. Back at camp, Aizawa met Izuku's eyes as he returned. Teacher and student, wary and unyielding. "You talked to him?" Aizawa asked. Izuku nodded. Aizawa looked away, jaw tight. "Good. Learn what you can. Just remember who's watching you." Izuku stepped past, the dawn at his back. The world was watching, but for the first time, it felt like he was not alone. Smoke hung thick over Kamino Ward, swirling between shattered windows and broken neon. The city's bones were bare and bleeding. Sirens howled in the distance, their wails swallowed by the wind. Police cordons flickered red and blue against chaos. Above, helicopters circled, hungry, helpless birds. All Might stood alone in the ruins, cape torn, eyes hard and old. The world watched him, desperate for hope. But Kamino's darkness was deeper than any wound, and tonight, something more than heroism was demanded. Within the collapsed husk of a mall, the League of Villains gathered. Shigaraki hunched over Bakugu's unconscious body, Dabi flanking the shadows, twice muttering, Toga's smile red with anticipation. And at their center, veiled by glass and ruin, All for One waited, his presence bending the air. Izuku found the battle before it began. He moved through Kamino's debris in silence, a ghost among the ruins. The cursed energy inside him surged, thick as fog, pulled by a gravity older than the city itself. He saw the confrontation shaping up like a storm. All might against his greatest enemy, the League desperate and hungry for chaos, Bakugo the prize at their feet. Izuku stepped into the breach, unnoticed until the energy shifted. All for One turned, the pressure of his gaze a tidal wave. "So, the anomaly," he said, voice of velvet iron. "You've made quite the mess." Shigaraki hissed, inching back. "He's not normal, sensei. He broke us." All Might shouted, voice breaking with urgency and dread. "Young Midoriya, stay back. This is not your fight." Izuku looked at him, really looked, searching for the man he'd once idolized. He saw only fear and fatigue. "It never was," he said softly. Then, turning to All for One, "You want to see what I am? You'll have to show what you are, too." The challenge crackled through the broken air. All for One smiled, a ruin of teeth and ambition. "As you wish." He moved. The world shrank to the clash, darkness and violence, quirks twisting and snapping, the ground buckling under pressure. But Izuku was faster. He read the intention behind every blow, sidestepped quirk-laced destruction, and closed the distance before All for One could react. Cursed energy flared, raw and sharp as lightning. With a single strike, measured, precise, absolute, Izuku shattered the villain's armor, the force of it sending echoes through the night. All for One staggered, surprise flickering in his ruined face. For the first time in decades, he felt pain. He felt fear. Shigaraki screamed, the League lashing out. Izuku moved through them, a blur, a force, never cruel, never gloating, just inevitable. Dabi's flames met cold emptiness. Toga's knife snapped in his grip. Twice fell to his knees, babbling in terror. All Might stared, chest heaving. The era of One for All trembled on the edge of collapse. "This isn't my world anymore," he thought, awe and sorrow warring in his heart. All for One rose, shedding the last of his armor, true power blazing. "You are not of this world, boy. You never were." Izuku's voice was quiet, unwavering. "Maybe, but I'm here now, and you will not break them again." They clashed again, energy against energy, brute force against ancient will. Buildings crumpled. The sky burned. Kamino shook as the two forces collided, equal and opposite. In the chaos, Bakugo staggered awake, just in time to see Izuku standing, unbowed, at the center of the storm. For a moment, he felt both terror and something dangerously close to hope. And as the world watched, heroes, villains, citizens, gods, the old order ended. The new era announced in thunder and ruin. When the dust settled, All for One's mask lay cracked at Izuku's feet, and everyone, friend, foe, and legend alike, understood. The endgame had begun, and the balance of power would never be the same. Smoke rolled over Kamino like a tide, swallowing the lights, the sirens, and the last remnants of certainty. UA's best converged on the ruins, the city trembling beneath their feet. Tonight, there would be no bystanders, only witnesses to a world that could not go back. Inside the broken mall, the League of Villains ringed Bakugo, bound, bloodied, eyes furious even in helplessness. Shigaraki flexed his fingers, face half shadow, as Dabi leaned against shattered tile, a smile carved by old fire. All for One waited above them, his presence bending the shadows, every breath thick with history and threat. All Might arrived first, wind roaring in his wake, the symbol of peace battered but unbroken. For a moment, hope flickered on the edge of the carnage. Then Izuku entered the ruin, his steps silent, green eyes cold with purpose. Every villain in the room felt it. The pressure, the presence, the certainty that things had changed. All for One turned, voice velvet and venom. "There you are, anomaly. The world wants to know what you'll choose." Izuku met his gaze with the quiet of a gathering storm. "I didn't come to choose. I came to end this." All Might shouted, "Young Midoriya, stay back." Izuku shook his head, stepping forward. "Your era is over. This isn't your fight anymore." For a heartbeat, all sound faded. Then All for One moved, space warping, quirks colliding in a howl of wind and fire. Izuku didn't retreat. He advanced, every movement preternaturally calm, cursed energy pouring off him in cold waves. He slid past Shigaraki's grasping hands, shattered Dabi's flames with a flick of the wrist, and cut through Kurogiri's mist as if it were nothing but breath in winter air. The world narrowed to two, Izuku and All for One. Ancient will against something even older, otherworldly, inexorable. All for One struck with a dozen quirks, each blow meant to maim or kill. Izuku bent reality around his skin, each attack glancing off, redirected, neutralized. He found the fault line in the villain's armor, drove a single, precise blow through the facade, cracked spiderwebbing through the black, hope shattering in the villain's eyes. For the first time, All for One faltered, true form revealed beneath the ruin. "What are you?" he demanded, the words edged with fear. Izuku's voice was nearly a whisper. "I'm the answer to your cruelty." Behind them, the League's courage broke. Dabi lunged, desperate. Izuku caught his wrist, and Dabi screamed as his own fire licked up his arm, pain outpacing pride. Shigaraki watched, horrified, as his master bled. All Might saw it all, his own legend eclipsed by a boy who fought with neither rage nor hope, but inevitability. The fight ended as it began, suddenly, utterly. All for One collapsed, breath rattling, power spent. Izuku stood above him, shadows stretched across the broken city. But Kugu, freed, stared at his old friend, not as a rival, but as something else, something the world could barely imagine. Kamino burned in silence. Helicopters circled overhead, but even the media could not find words. All Might looked at Izuku, at the boy who had ended the old age and begun something new. The world would not forget this night. The endgame had started, and in the ruins, Izuku Midoriya stood unmoved, the world's new center of gravity, alone, but unbroken. That Kamino's ruins still smoked as dawn bled into the sky, washing broken glass and scorched concrete in a sickly gold. Police cordons wrapped the city's wounds, reporters pressed against barriers, and the world watched through the cold lens of a camera as the impossible aftermath took shape. Inside the battered skeleton of the mall, the League of Villains gathered in the shadows, ragged, shaken, and leaderless for the first time. Shigaraki stood trembling, eyes darting between the fallen form of All for One, chest heaving, mask broken, and the boy who had shattered him. Every villain in the room felt it. The shift, the silence, the edge where hope or fear could cut either way. Dabi broke the hush, stepping forward, his coat scorched, pride scorched deeper. "You don't belong here, Midoriya, but you're not a hero either. What are you really?" Izuku faced him, his presence filling the ruined hall, cursed energy humming under his skin. "You want me to pick a side? I won't." Dabi laughed, raw and desperate. "You think you're better than us? Heroes, villains, they're the same to people like you." "No," Izuku replied. "They're not. But I won't be either." Dabi's eyes flickered, pain leaking through his mask of cool. "The world's changing. Men like us, monsters, don't get to walk away clean." He lunged, fire surging from his palms. Izuku stepped forward, unhurried, catching the flame in his hand. The cursed energy swallowed the fire, heat vanishing as if the world itself denied it. Dabi's arm blistered, his confidence shattered. He recoiled, panting, haunted. Shigaraki staggered to his feet, voice hoarse, brittle with loss. He was supposed to be unbeatable. "My master." Izuku's gaze met his, unwavering. He was only a man. The rest was illusion. The League shifted, the chain binding them snapped. Some, like Toga, looked at Izuku with hungry fascination. Others, like Spinner, stared with open dread. Twice cowered in a corner, muttering fragments of hope and denial. For the first time, the League splintered. Dabi stalked out, clutching his ruined arm, voice breaking. "If you won't join us, then you're just in the way." Toga slinked after him, torn between admiration and fear. Kirojiri, eyes fixed on Shigaraki, whispered, "What now?" Shigaraki stared at his shaking hands, the loss of his master a wound that would never heal. "Now, we survive. We change. Or we die." Izuku left them in the wreckage. No triumph, no threat, just the silence of a force that had passed through and left the world altered. He walked back into the light, police and heroes parting around him, unsure whether to arrest him, thank him, or just pray he never turned his gaze their way. Above the shattered city, helicopters wheeled and news anchors stammered. Below, the League of Villains became something new, broken, fractured, each searching for a future in the ruins of the old. And at the heart of it all, Izuku Midoriya walked alone, the world's axis tilting in his wake. Neither hero nor villain, but something the world would never again be able to ignore. In the wake of Kamino, a tremor ran through hero society, quiet at first, then building to a rattle that no one could ignore. Morning found the city dusted with ash and rumor. News tickers scrolled with words that sounded like prophecy. Symbol of peace fades. League in shambles. Who watches the watchers now? At UA, the faculty gathered in the staff room, faces pinched and sleepless. The HPSC arrived in black suits and silver earpieces, their voices brittle, carrying directives heavier than any wound. Nizu stood at the head of the table, paws folded, gaze unreadable. You've all seen the broadcasts. Midoriya's actions changed everything. For us, for the world. He didn't kill, but he ended an age. Aizawa's eyes were shadows above his scarf. We should protect him. He's still a child. A commissioner shook her head. He's not just a child. He's the strongest thing walking. And strong things, unchecked, break the world. All Might looked away, shame and hope warring behind his eyes. He was the answer we couldn't give. Now, everyone's asking if we even have a future. The room fell silent as new memos slid across the table. Observation protocols. Emergency powers. Target, Midoriya Izuku. Outside the staff room, a different reckoning was brewing. Heroes once bold now spoke in low, uncertain voices. Some watched Izuku in the halls, shading into wariness. Others walked wide around him, remembering the way their best were left helpless in his shadow. A team from the HPSC arrived, dressed plain, faces unreadable, but their presence made the very air grow thin. They trailed Izuku through UA's halls, never touching, never intervening, simply there, a living question, a warning. Students noticed. Rumors grew sharper. He's under surveillance. What if they try to lock him up? Could anyone even stop him? Bakugo confronted Izuku in the dorm hallway, voice pitched low, every muscle strung tight. They think you're a bomb that could go off any minute. You gonna prove them right? Izuku met his gaze with the calm that had become legend. I won't be used by fear, Kaken. Not theirs. Not yours. Bakugo flinched, anger warping into something older, sadder. Elsewhere, a trio of pro-heroes, sent to observe, disappeared from campus. No violence, no alarms, just a note left behind. Outmatched. No further action recommended. UA staff found the note, written in careful, unhurried script. Some took it as a threat, others a mercy. Late that night, as rain ticked on the glass, Aizawa found Izuku in a darkened classroom. They stood in silence, teacher and student, neither sure what the world would demand next. Are you scared? Aizawa asked, finally. Izuku turned to the window, city lights reflected in eyes too old for his face. I'm not the one who should be. Outside, the city watched and waited. Hero society holding its breath, wondering if the storm would pass, or if this was only the first rumble of something no one could control. And in that hush, a reckoning continued. Not for Izuku alone, but for every hero who had ever thought power could be contained. Dawn broke over UA like a warning. A sickly yellow light bleeding through storm clouds, the air thick with promise and threat. Security drones whirred above the campus, their sensors bright and pitiless. Pro-heroes lined the gates, nerves raw after weeks of tension. But everyone knew, deep down, that no wall, no technology, no law could truly hold the darkness at bay. Word came early. The League was coming. Sirens wailed. Teachers barked orders. Students clustered in the great hall, eyes wide, hearts thudding. Even Bakugo, brash as always, glanced at the windows, fists trembling, not with fear, but with anticipation. Izuku watched from the main entrance, calm as glass. His presence turned the crowd. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Across the field, portals split the air, Hirogiri's mist coiling as Nomu spilled out in waves, hulking shapes and hungry eyes. Shigaraki led them, fingers twitching, gaze burning with a desperate, furious hope. The pro-heroes braced themselves, but Izuku stepped forward, alone. Shigaraki's voice cracked the morning. Move, Midoriya. This isn't your fight anymore. Izuku didn't answer. He walked through the gates, cursed energy shimmering around him, eyes cold as winter sea glass. The Noma surged, roaring, unstoppable, mindless, bred for violence. They hit him like a landslide. For a heartbeat, the world vanished in dust and fury. Then the dust cleared, and Izuku stood unbowed, his hands sheathed in a light that wasn't light, the air bending to keep him whole. He dismantled the first Nomu with a single motion, rending muscle from bone, intent from body. He moved through the mob, each step deliberate, every blow inevitable. The League watched from the gate, hesitant, afraid. Dabi spat fire. Izuku swallowed it in his palm. Toga darted close, blades flashing, but Izuku slipped past her, leaving only the echo of her own heartbeat. Hirojiri's mist tried to close around him, but the cursed energy turned it to vapor, dissolving it before it could touch him. Shigaraki stared, horror blooming in his eyes. "Why can't you just die?" Izuku met his gaze, voice softer than the storm. "Because you're not ready." The League surged again, but none could pass. Behind Izuku, UA's heroes regrouped, students shielding each other, hope and terror braided together. The campus shuddered with the clash. Heroes on the walls, the League at the gates, and in the center, one boy who held the darkness at bay. Hours later, as the sun finally broke through the clouds, the League retreated, battered, diminished, their anger turned brittle and small. Nomu lay scattered on the grass, unmoving. A hush fell over UA. Students crept from their hiding places. Pro-heroes stared at Izuku in open awe and fear. Bakugo approached last, voice shaking. "Why do you keep standing in front? Why alone?" Izuku didn't turn. "Because someone must. And because I can." Bakugo let the words hang, the truth of them heavier than any threat. Above, the city's eyes fixed on UA, on the boy who stood at the threshold, holding back the tide. Neither hero nor villain, but a barrier the world could not breach or break. The siege had ended, but the question lingered. What happens to a world that can only be saved by something it cannot understand? Twilight fell over UA in shades of gold and bruised violet. The sky a cracked mirror of all that had been broken and rebuilt below. Word of the League's retreat pulsed through the halls like a living thing. Relief tangled with awe, gratitude curdled by fear. For the first time in weeks, laughter returned to the dorms, voices rising behind locked doors as students tried to convince themselves that the world, for now, was safe. But the corridors outside were quiet. The space around Izuku Midoriya had grown wider, like the radius around a burning coal, too hot, too bright to touch. Even as classmates whispered his name with reverence, even as his presence became legend, the distance never closed. Bakugo found him on the empty rooftop, city lights swimming beneath the dusk. He didn't announce himself. For a moment, he just stood there, the air between them brittle and electric. Finally, he spoke, voice raw, stripped of anger. "Are you even human anymore?" Izuku did not look away from the horizon. "Does it matter if I fight for them?" Bakugo clenched his fists, jaw working. "It matters to me." A silence stretched, sharp as shattered glass. Bakugo stepped closer, searching Izuku's profile for something. Pain, hope, regret. "You're alone up here. Even when you're with us, you're not with us. Why do you keep coming back? Why not just leave? Be the storm everyone says you are?" Izuku turned, and for a moment, Bakugo saw it all in his eyes. Exhaustion, the weight of every secret, a kind of longing neither could name. "I stay," Izuku said quietly. "Because if I don't, there's nothing to come back to." Bakugo's breath caught. Izuku looked back to the city. "It's not about being a hero, Kaken. It's about being the reason there's still light, even if I can only hold back the dark for a while." Bakugo stepped away, unable to answer. For the first time, he understood. Power and pain braided together. Loneliness, so complete it became its own kind of faith. Inside, the class celebrated with sweets and cheap jokes, but more than one student looked to the windows, watching for the silhouette on the roof. Uraraka sat by the glass, clutching a mug, whispering a wish she didn't dare speak aloud. Todoroki lingered in the hall, his shadow split by the glow of two worlds, one cold, one burning, wondering what would be left when the storm finally passed. That night, as darkness rolled over UA, Izuku stood alone on the rooftop, the city's breath rising to meet him. He felt the loneliness, the awe, the hope, and the fear, each a thread tying him to the world he fought to save. And in that quiet, he made his vow again, not to be their hero, not to be their god, but to be the light that lasted, for as long as he could hold it, even if no one ever knew his name. Below, the world slept, safe, for now. In the hush between darkness and light, the city slept uneasy beneath an amber moon, shadows pooling in every alley and on every rooftop. UA's campus, battered but unbowed, shone with the fevered vigilance of a world that had survived too much and trusted too little. But as midnight deepened, Something older than fear moved at the city's edge, a hunger that had waited, watched, and planned for years. All for One struck just before the clock turned. His arrival was not heralded by fanfare or flame, but by a shattering of silence, a pressure on the air, a ripple that twisted streetlights and bent windows in their frames. In the command center, warning lights blinked out, one by one, as power failed across the grid. Aizawa woke first, instinct screaming. But before he could reach the door, a fissure split the ground outside UA, dark as the void beneath the world. All for One stepped through, alone, armored and restored, his aura black as gravity. Behind him, portals bloomed and faded, Nomu spilling into the night, scrambling toward their target. The campus erupted in chaos. Heroes fought at every gate, students roused and rallied. But none of it mattered. All for One walked toward the heart of UA, unstoppable, a force that bent the world to his will. Izuku met him in the center courtyard, alone. The two stood beneath the ruined stars, wind scraping ash from the flagstones. "You could have joined me," All for One said, voice oily and vast. "You could have ruled them all." Izuku's eyes glinted, bright as emerald steel. "You want a world ruled by fear. I want a world that survives it." All for One smiled, mask fractured but unwavering. "Then show me your answer." He attacked, a storm of quirks, space distorting, gravity snapping. The air screamed. Izuku met him, not with spectacle, but with inevitability. Cursed energy wrapped his body, an armor deeper than any metal, the city's breath funneling around him. They clashed, energy against energy, ancient ambition against otherworldly will. The world trembled with each blow, streets shattered, glass fountained from windows. The earth itself recoiled. All for One grew desperate, burning through powers, summoning vortexes and lightning, crushing stone to powder. He fought not just to kill, but to erase, to unmake the thing that stood against him. Izuku moved through every attack, anticipation etched into every muscle, his eyes never blinking. When All for One closed with a blow meant to end all things, Izuku sidestepped, pressing a palm to the villain's chest. Cursed energy surged, a current as old as hunger, as patient as death. All for One screamed, power folding in on itself. His armor cracked, fractured, and split. His body buckled. "You're not the end," Izuku whispered. "You're just another shadow." The final blow flared in silence, a light not meant for human eyes. All for One fell, the ground shuddering, power leaking from every wound. Sirens wailed, far away. Noma scattered. The League's lieutenants fled, hope gone. Aizawa, bloodied but breathing, arrived to see Izuku standing alone above the fallen king, midnight wind twisting his hair. For a moment, Aizawa couldn't speak, couldn't name the thing he saw in that light. Izuku turned, voice low. "It's over. For now." And as dawn broke, a weak, uncertain sun, news flashed across every screen. All for One defeated. UA stands. But inside every home, every agency, every frightened heart, a new question flickered, trembling in the wake of victory. What do you do with the hero who defeated the end itself? The city woke to the thunder of helicopters and the stutter of news drones. Even in victory, the air felt thin, the silence between sirens long and strange. All for One had fallen, yet a deeper shadow remained, fractured and scattered, but not erased. The League of Villains ran, hunted and desperate, through the ruins of Kamino and the far, unfamiliar alleys of Tokyo. Each member bore the marks of defeat, not just bruises or burns, but the deeper wound of being measured and found wanting. In a boarded-up warehouse, Shigaraki clawed at a map, palms bleeding, breath ragged. The remaining League gathered around him. Dabi, face singed, Toga, clutching her side, twice, muttering old jokes to himself. "We regroup. We retaliate. We remind them," Shigaraki began. But the words turned to dust in his mouth as the door slid open, soundless. Izuku stood in the threshold, rainwater streaming from his hair, cursed energy humming in the gloom. No theatrics, no threats. He moved like a question already answered. Dabi flared to strike, flames blue and wild, but Izuku stepped inside the fire, unharmed. With a twist, he redirected the heat, turning it harmlessly aside. Dabi fell to his knees, coughing on his own ambition. Toga slashed at the air, knife flashing. Izuku caught her wrist, his grip gentle but unbreakable, eyes meeting hers. Not cruel, not cold, but implacable. "Enough," he said, and her blade slipped from numb fingers. Twice tried to duplicate himself, but every copy stumbled, energy warped by Izuku's presence. Spinner lunged, sword trembling, but Izuku dodged without effort, disarming him with a sigh. One by one, he left them alive but ruined. Villains who had built themselves on pain and rage, now faced with the silence of a boy who neither gloated nor raged. He just moved. Shigaraki tried to flee, portal flickering to life, but Izuku's hand landed softly on his shoulder. A pressure, immense and gentle, filled the air. "You lost," Izuku said. "Not because you were weak, because you were always alone." Shigaraki snarled, grief raw and childish. "You don't understand." Izuku shook his head. "I do." For a moment, the room was quiet except for the rain and the sound of dreams breaking. He let them go, left them in the dark, humiliated but breathing, every illusion of power gone. Police and heroes would find them soon, shells of threat with nothing left to give. Outside, the rain fell harder. Izuku walked away from the warehouse and into the world, his presence folding into the early morning. At UA, students watched the news, faces pale, eyes wide. He ended them all. By himself, Uraraka whispered, "He never gloats. He never even smiles." Bakugu's jaw clenched, haunted by the simplicity of Izuku's strength. Aizawa sat in the staff room, head in his hands, wondering if they had ever understood the boy who changed everything. Above the city, the storm passed, and in the hush that followed, the world understood. Every story of power is also a story of loneliness, and the sharpest victories leave the deepest shadows behind. The city woke beneath a new sun, pale, watchful, slow to rise over the fractured skyline. News crawled across every screen, all for one imprisoned. League of Villains fallen. Headlines screamed of salvation, but the streets felt hollow, stunned, waiting for echoes. UA's halls were silent, the laughter of students thin and uncertain. Even victory tasted like loss. Heroes met in closed rooms, voices hushed, eyes darting to the windows. Some wondered if the world had truly been saved, or if something stranger and more fragile had replaced the chaos they'd known. Izuku Midoriya moved through the aftermath like a ghost, shoulders squared, eyes hollowed by 1,000 unsaid questions. He was met with reverence, fear, admiration. He accepted none of it. The campus, for all its safety, felt emptier than any battlefield. Even Bakugu, pride battered and grief-struck, watched Izuku pass without a word. No one pranked him. No one challenged him. They left space for him in every hallway, as if he were an open wound that could not be touched. In the principal's office, Nizu watched the sky, the city stretching toward the sea. Aizawa sat opposite, tie loosened, exhaustion etched into every line. "He broke the league," Aizawa murmured, voice flat. "He broke all for one. He could break us, too." Nizu's whiskers trembled. "Or remake us. The world is cracked, eraser. All we can do is choose how we live in its shadow." Far above the city, in a steel prison thick with silence, All for One sat in his cell, eyes shut, lips curved in the ghost of a smile. Even in defeat, he felt it, the tremor of a world remade by something it had never planned for. Across oceans, foreign leaders watched satellite feeds, voices raised in frantic debate. Is he a hero? A weapon? Can he be controlled? Should he be destroyed? And at the edge of UA's campus, Izuku stood in the garden beneath a sky that would never look the same. Cursed energy simmered at his fingertips, quiet, patient, inexhaustible. He closed his eyes, feeling the world turn. Every promise he had made, every line he had drawn, seemed fragile in the face of so much uncertainty. In the dorms, students huddled together, clutching blankets, inventing new stories to scare and comfort themselves in equal measure. Did you see him? He never flinched. He saved us. But will he stay? Night crept over the city, soft and cold. In that hush, Izuku stood alone at the highest window, watching lights blink out one by one. He was a hero. He was a weapon. He was the silence that followed the end. And somewhere, in the dark spaces between heartbeats, the world braced for whatever came next. In the trembling dawn after Kamino, Tokyo's skyline glimmered with uneasy hope. Smoke drifted from shattered buildings, banners of victory and loss tangled together in the wind. The headlines changed by the hour, World saved. Hero society in crisis. Midoriya, the next threat? Within UA's sturdy walls, celebration and dread warred in every hallway. Teachers watched the news with haunted eyes. First-year students whispered legends of the night Midoriya walked through the league, and all for one, leaving them broken but alive. No one cheered in the usual way. No one dared. In the common rooms, 1A and 1B crowded the television, listening as politicians and pro-heroes bickered on screen. Who will protect us now that All Might is gone? Are we safe with someone like Midoriya among us? Is he a hero or the next threat? Kirishima slammed his fist on the couch. He saved everyone. They're afraid because he's strong. Uraraka hugged her knees, eyes fixed on Izuku's empty chair. He's alone, she whispered, even when he's here. Bakuga didn't speak. He sat apart, teeth gritted, replaying the last look Izuku had given him in the ruins. A glance that saw everything, forgave nothing, and vanished before anyone could answer. Pro-heroes gathered in the teacher's wing, the mood grim. They're calling for new oversight, said Present Mike, voice flat. We've always monitored powerful students, Snipe added. But this, it's different. Recovery Girl's hand trembled as she poured tea. He doesn't heal. Not the way he should. He's something else. Something even I can't reach. All Might, silent in the corner, felt the burden of a mantle gone. He remembered the words Izuku had spoken. I want to be what you never dared. Outside, the world wavered between awe and terror. The powerless flocked to UA's gates, holding up hand-painted banners. He's our hero. Thank you, Midoriya. But as days passed, so too did fear. Patrols increased. News crews waited for a misstep. Foreign dignitaries sent coded warnings, urging Japan to contain the anomaly. Hero agencies debated, recruit, monitor, or isolate. In every dark corner, the defeated villains plotted, fearing the shadow that had humbled them without hate. And at night, when the campus quieted, Izuku sat at his desk, window cracked to let in the restless city air. He watched the moon rise, feeling the weight of every eye, every hope, every fear pressing in from the world beyond. He had given everything, his mercy, his power, his silence. In the ashes of victory, the world looked for a new symbol, but found only questions. In the silence that followed, legacy and danger grew inseparable. Was this peace, or just the eye of another storm? Izuku closed his notebook, the city's pulse steady in his veins. He was not the answer they wanted, nor the threat they deserved. He was simply himself, a blade forged by darkness, and the only shield the world had left. And outside, beneath the wounded sky, the future waited, uncertain, unbroken, and utterly changed. That a strange hush settled over UA, heavier than any threat that had come before. Victory had left scars, and every shadow felt longer now, every silence sharper. News vans no longer idled at the gates, but inside the halls, 1,000 questions pressed in from every direction. The HPSC had acted swiftly. Their new task force arrived with the rain. Plainclothes agents, faces blank, voices clipped. They claimed to be observers, but everyone knew the truth. They were watchers, the last line of defense, or the first line of execution. They watched Izuku Midoriya everywhere he went. In class, a suited figure waited outside the door. In the cafeteria, agents sipped tea in the corner, pretending to read the paper. On the track, their eyes ticked over every movement, every breath. It didn't matter how polite they were, how invisible they tried to be. Their presence changed the air. Some students whispered that the agents were there for all of 1A, but everyone knew the truth. This was about Midoriya. It was always about Midoriya. Bakugo glared at the watchers, resentment burning behind his eyes. Let them try something. They wouldn't last a minute. Kirishima grinned, but it was forced. Still, good to know they're scared of him, not just villains. Mineta shuddered. What if they decide to, take him out? Todoroki's face was unreadable. They won't. Not if they want to live. Some pro-heroes refused to take part in the task force. Aizawa was the first. He's a student, not a threat, he told the commission, voice hard as steel. You want a warden, not a teacher? Find someone else. Midnight and Present Mike followed suit, their loyalty clear, their patience gone. But not all heroes felt the same. Hawks arrived in civilian clothes, perched on rooftops, gaze cool but curious. A handful of heroes, old guard and rising stars alike, came to Izuku quietly, seeking guidance, protection, or simply a chance to understand. One night, As thunder crawled across the city, Izuku found All Might in the empty gym. "They're scared," Tashinori said, voice gentle, gaze haunted. "They think you're a weapon." Izuku wrapped his hands in tape, eyes on the cracked floor. "Am I?" All Might shook his head. "No, but you're something they don't know how to trust." A silence grew between them, neither comfortable nor cold. "All I wanted was to help," Izuku murmured. "And you have," All Might answered. "But the world needs more than saving. It needs someone to show them how to be brave again." Izuku flexed his fingers, cursed energy rippling just beneath the skin. "Then let them watch." Outside, the task force tightened their watch. Inside, the students of 1A drew closer, their loyalty woven with nerves and admiration. And in the dark corners of UA, the true danger grew, not from the boy they feared, but from the choices every hero would have to make. Was Midoriya a shield or a warning, a promise or a threat? Only the Watchers knew for sure, and even they wondered how long the world could survive its own doubts. Thunder boomed over Narita Airport as a private jet descended, its lights winking in the rain. Inside, men and women in crisp uniforms checked dossiers and dossiers again. Photos flickered on digital tablets. Izuku Midoriya, mid-battle. A headline, in English and Japanese, "The Heavenly Boy." The world had taken notice, not just of the fall of All for One, but of the boy at the center of every storm. Within a week, international hero teams began to arrive. Americans with silver badges, Europeans in tailored suits, even a delegation from China. Publicly, they were here to observe, to learn from Japan's ordeal. Privately, they came with orders: gauge the threat, make alliances, prepare for the worst. UA's faculty met the first delegation in a conference room still scarred from the last emergency meeting. Nizu greeted them with tea and perfect courtesy. Aizawa's eyes never left their hands. Agent Cole from the United States, all sharp jaw and colder smile, spoke first. "Your Midoriya is remarkable. The world would like to know him better. Test his limits. Perhaps offer him a place where he can do the most good." Nizu's ears twitched, perfectly polite. Midoriya is a student, not a weapon, not a resource to be deployed. A British hero, Merlin, they called her, folded her hands, her gaze clinical. "You don't believe you can keep him, do you? Or control him, if you must?" A chill swept the room. News spread fast. Reporters staked out UA's gates, speculating in a dozen languages. Foreign teams to meet with Midoriya. Is Japan hiding a new superweapon? Global summit on quirkless threat? Inside UA, the students watched international heroes with a mix of awe and suspicion. Kaminari snapped a selfie with a visiting French speedster. Zero asked for an autograph, but won, as glances kept drifting to Izuku, now more legend than classmate. Uraraka whispered, "What do they want with him?" Todoroki's reply was cold. "Insurance. Or a deterrent." Bakuga scowled at every foreign badge he saw. "They'll regret it if they think they can take him." Izuku, for his part, endured the attention with the same patient detachment that had become his armor. He sat through interviews, his answers polite but empty, never giving more than the question required. In one meeting, an American hero asked, "If you had to choose, would you defend the world or stand with your own?" Izuku's eyes narrowed, voice soft. "I'm not here to rule or destroy. I'm here to serve, if you let me." The answer satisfied no one. In quiet corners, some of the international team watched Izuku in training, whispering together. He could change the balance. Too dangerous to leave unchecked. "We'll have to be ready." As the sun set behind UA, Izuku walked alone along the grounds, the weight of every nation's gaze settling like mist on his shoulders. He did not flinch, but somewhere, deep beneath his calm, a colder truth lingered. No borders could contain what he'd become. No alliance could outlast the fear he inspired. And as ghosts from abroad gathered at Japan's door, the world's next test was already taking shape. The world's gaze pressed in from every angle. Foreign eyes watching, hero agencies whispering, governments plotting contingencies. But in the cracks between headlines and handshakes, another current stirred. The old guard, the forgotten, those who had built hero society long before quirks became pageantry and protocol. Retired pro-heroes emerged from shadow and memory. Men and women who had watched the world change too fast, whose scars were earned, not broadcast. Some wore their age like armor. Others hid it in careful words and watchful eyes. Vigilantes long thought vanished resurfaced, drawn by the rumor of Midoriya, the heavenly boy, the anomaly, the hope, or the threat. They came in trickles at first. An ex-sidekick left a handwritten note at Yue's gate. I want to meet him. An old woman in faded hero gear stopped Izuku in the street, clutching his hand with trembling strength. Don't let them turn you into a weapon, she whispered. Not for them. Not for anyone. A former underground hero called a secret meeting in a windowless cafe. Izuku found himself surrounded by weathered faces, haunted by their own history. We failed to stop the rot, said one, voice rough as gravel. Now they want to use you to fix it, or to bury it. Which will you do? Izuku sat in silence, letting the words fill the room. Another, once known for unregistered rescues, leaned forward. You've given the powerless hope, but you've given the powerful fear. What does a hero owe the world when the world won't trust itself? Izuku's reply was soft. To keep fighting, even when there's no applause. To remind people what it means to choose. A hush fell. Someone old and bent wiped their eyes. We're not all here to stop you, boy. Some of us want to help. Some want to ask for your help. There are uprisings, villains, yes, but also people who've lost faith in the old system. This is your era, but it's not yours alone. Remember that. As he left, a former vigilante pressed a battered badge into his palm. Whatever you become, don't let them write your story for you. That night, news broke of a riot in Osaka. A new villain group on the rise. Chaos spreading at the edges of the old order. Some called for Midoriya to intervene. Others warned against feeding the legend. Yue's halls thrummed with anxiety. In the teacher's lounge, Aizawa met All Might's gaze. Do you think he can save us from ourselves? All Might shook his head. He can show us how, but we have to choose it. On the roof, Izuku watched city lights tremble against the dark, old names and new burdens echoing in his thoughts. He was not alone, not entirely, but he was the question that would not go away. What is a hero in a world that's forgotten what hope feels like? In the hush before the next storm, Izuku stood as both challenge and answer. Knowing the future was coming for them all, summer softened the city, but for many, hope was harder to find. News cycles spun with Midoriya's legend. Hero, weapon, cautionary tale. For quirkless children, though, it was something else. Proof that the world's boundaries could be broken. Izuku noticed them first in letters, scribbled in uneven handwriting, addressed to the heavenly hero. They came from small towns, from city wards that pro-heroes never visited. I can't fly or lift things, but I want to be brave. They said we can't be heroes, but you proved them wrong. How did you do it? Please visit us. Just once. I want to believe. Yue's mailroom overflowed. Staff debated what to do. The HPSC wanted to screen and limit contact, but Izuku was already moving before anyone could decide. He slipped away one weekend, trading his uniform for a plain sweatshirt and cap. Alone, he walked through narrow streets and faded parks until he reached an orphanage in a forgotten corner of the city, a place with no name in the news, but echoes of longing in every window. The children spotted him at once. Some ran, eyes wide, clutching homemade hero badges. Others hung back, cautious, uncertain whether a legend would see them. Izuku knelt, letting them approach, answering their questions with patience and a gentleness that made the oldest staff weep. A boy missing his left hand asked, "Do you ever wish you were normal?" Izuku considered. "I used to. But now I think normal just means we haven't chosen who we are yet." A girl with tired eyes whispered, "Can you show us how to be strong?" He led them through simple exercises, self-defense, breath work, how to read a threat before it struck. He taught them to move together, to watch out for each other, to never mistake silence for weakness. Most of all, he listened to stories of being overlooked, mocked, left behind by a world obsessed with power. At the end of the day, as shadows stretched, Izuku handed each child a slip of paper. On it, he'd written a single word. Hope. He said, "No one gets to decide what you are but you. Not a hero, not a villain, not anyone in power. You choose." Every day, a shy girl tugged his sleeve. "Will you come back?" Izuku smiled. "As long as you remember what I taught you, I'll always be with you." News of the visit spread, rumors growing into legend. Other quirkless children sent more letters, schools started clubs, neighborhoods painted murals of a green-haired boy standing among shadows and light. UA staff noticed the change. The hall seemed brighter, more voices laughed openly. Some teachers, once wary, found themselves believing again, and far from the headlines and the watchers, in quiet rooms across the city, hope flickered, small but stubborn. Midoriya had given them more than a story. He'd given them a reason to believe that being different was not a weakness, but the world's most powerful kind of strength. The city's tension became a pulse. Every day, a new rumor. Every night, a new scar. Midoriya's legend was a double-edged sword. It lit hope in the shadows, but it also drew out those who could not bear a world where power had no master. A manifesto surfaced online, spreading through dark corners and angry forums. The true evolutionists. They called themselves the next step, a righteous fire. To them, Izuku was not proof of hope, but proof of a mistake. A quirkless anomaly who had unbalanced the old order. Their leader appeared first as a rumor, then as a storm. Rei Shigaraki, no relation to the League's ruined king, just a new force, wild and radiant, with a mutation that bent the air in her wake, eyes that shimmered with the colors of broken glass. Her power was terrifying. Reality itself bent and splintered near her, as if the world blurred at her will. Streets warped, walls rippled, voices fractured into echoes. Her followers grew, quirk supremacists drawn from every corner, fueled by fear and a promise. We will set the world right. They attacked first at dusk, targeting UA with the precision of old revolutionaries and the fury of zealots. Hostages were taken, students, a handful of teachers, and a pair of young children from the orphanage Izuku had just visited. The message was clear, scrawled across the gates in bleeding red. Evolution will not be denied. UA's response was swift. Heroes assembled, task forces mobilized, but every plan buckled beneath the evolutionist mutation field. Radio signals warped, gravity twisted, hope itself seemed to flicker. Izuku walked through the chaos as if born to it. The world folded around him, but he moved true, untouched by the field that bent lesser minds. Where others faltered, he pressed forward, eyes locked on Rei. He found her at the school's core, hostages ringed by zealots, Rei standing on shattered tile. Her presence was a fracture in the world, a place where possibility itself rebelled. "You're the reason this world is lost," Rei called, her voice ringing like a cracked bell. A monster, pretending at mercy. "I'll show them the cost of weakness." Izuku didn't posture. He only said, "You're hurting children to prove a point. That's all the world needs to know." She lashed out, space breaking between them. Izuku moved inside her radius, cursed energy burning so cold that her warping field froze for a heartbeat. He struck, no anger, just purpose, disabling her with a precision that left her gasping, her reality-warping power shattering with a final, silent scream. Her followers fell quickly. He left them breathing, but broken, the cost of supremacist thinking exposed for all to see. The hostages were freed. The children ran to him, eyes wide not with fear, but with gratitude. Even the youngest teacher wept. By midnight, the world had seen the footage. A boy, unbroken by reality's fracture, standing in the center of chaos. Never cruel, never careless, only resolute. Some called for Izuku to lead. Others demanded he be contained. But in every debate, one truth became harder to ignore. The world's rules had changed, and the future now belonged to the broken and the bold. Rain slashed at UA's windows, thunder drumming a rhythm older than fear. The world had barely begun to recover from the evolutionist attack, but hope was a fragile thing. For some, it had already begun to crack. It happened in the hour before dawn. Sirens shrieked through the halls, blue strobes flickering on stunned faces. The true evolutionists had come again, this time with a desperate fury, storming the school's front gates and barricading themselves in the main building. They seized students, threatened faculty, and for a single, breathless moment, it seemed the campus would break. Their leader, Rei Shigaraki, trembling with the effort to hold her warped reality together, stood before the hostages, voice fraying at the edges. "This is your last warning," she screamed into the broadcast cameras. "Surrender the anomaly, or we will tear your future apart." Outside, pro-heroes marshaled their forces, but every strategy faltered as Rei's mutation field surged. Gravity twisted, electronics blinked dead, hope itself seemed to unravel. In the center of it all, Izuku watched from the shadows. Cursed energy whispered in his veins, steady and inexhaustible. He felt the pain in the air, the terror trembling behind every locked door. It would be so easy, he thought, to shatter every enemy here. But he remembered the faces of the children, the promise he had made. to be more than a weapon. He moved. The world bent as he passed. Evolutionists braced, shouting warnings that died in their throats. Izuku entered the barricade not as a conqueror, but as a shadow, slipping past armed zealots, disabling each with surgical calm, pressure points, breathless chokes, blows that left no mark but the certainty of defeat. He found Rei at the center, her field stuttering as she saw him. The hostages huddled behind her, trembling, but their eyes shone with hope. "It's over," Izuku said, voice soft but absolute. Rei screamed, hurling her power in desperation. Walls warped, the ceiling bowed, screams twisted into echoes. But Izuku pressed forward, letting her power break against the armor of his will. With a single, precise motion, he reached through the chaos, seizing her wrist, stopping her mutation at the source. Her strength fled, her knees buckled. She fell, weeping, unable to meet his gaze. The hostages ran to freedom. The youngest child, one of the quirkless orphans, looked up at Izuku, tears shining. "Thank you," she whispered, voice shaking but unafraid. Izuku knelt, brushing hair from her face. "You saved yourself. I just gave you the chance." By sunrise, the siege was broken. Heroes flooded the campus, teachers wept, and the world watched the footage. Izuku Midoriya disabling a revolution not with violence, but with an unyielding mercy. Everywhere, the question echoed. If this was what power looked like, could the world dare to hope? Or was this only the calm before a greater storm? And as Izuku walked into the morning, unhurried, the campus behind him breathing again, he knew he had changed something fundamental, not just in his enemies, but in the world that watched, trembling, from the edge of old fears. Rain swept the city clean, but nothing washed away the uncertainty. All across Japan, and far beyond, Midoriya's legend had outgrown its borders, seeping into every parliament, every boardroom, every midnight debate. The footage of the siege spread like wildfire. A boy, quiet and relentless, ending a revolution with mercy, not vengeance. A villain, defeated but not destroyed. A world, watching, fascinated, afraid. In Tokyo, politicians argued on camera, voices trembling with a fear they barely disguised. "He's too powerful. If we can't control him, the risk. Do we dare trust a force we can't understand?" International calls lit up the lines. Foreign leaders offered warnings, or promises, or threats. "Contain him, or face sanctions. Share your surveillance." No one entity should possess such a weapon. Protests erupted outside UA, some with signs begging Midoriya for protection, others warning of disaster if he wasn't exiled or controlled. He's hope for the powerless. No gods among men. At UA, the tension was unbearable. Heroes met in secret. Some argued for trust, others for exile. The staff was split. The students, watching their friend bear the world's weight, grew protective, defiant, loyal. Uraraka found Izuku in the garden, his eyes clouded by thought. "They're going to make you choose," she said quietly. "Exile, prison, or nothing but freedom." Izuku didn't look up. "There's no right answer. Not one that saves everyone." She reached for his hand. "Whatever you do, you won't be alone." He managed a faint, grateful smile. That night, the government delivered its ultimatum. 3 options, spelled out in stark language. 1. Exile. Leave Japan. Never return. The world will watch you, and you will never belong. 2. Imprisonment. Submit to containment. A hero in chains, a symbol of safety, but never of hope. 3. Freedom without limits. No oversight, no guidance, no allegiance. Live as you wish, but know that you will always be feared. The world's leaders signed. The nation waited. The media howled. Pro- and anti-Midoriya movements erupted in every city. Families fought over dinner tables. Friends turned to strangers. What does it mean to trust someone you can't understand? On UA's highest roof, Izuku faced the city lights, the 3 roads set before him. Below, his classmates gathered, refusing to look away. Aizawa, his eyes red-rimmed, spoke first. "You don't have to carry this alone. Not anymore." Bakugo and Todoroki flanked him, silent. Not rivals now, but brothers in arms. Izuku looked at them, at all of them, and in a voice as steady as dawn, he made his choice. "I'm here to serve, not to rule or run." He pressed Bakugo and Todoroki's hands in his, passing the mantle with a trust deeper than blood. "You are the next generation. Lead them. Show them what comes after fear." And with that, Izuku stepped back, out of the spotlight, into legend. As the world thundered, As leaders raged and prayed and hoped, one truth rose above the storm. Midoriya was no longer just a hero, or a threat, or even a weapon. He was a choice, one the world would have to make, again and again. Long after his shadow faded from the roof of UA, the world waited for Izuku Midoriya's answer. The air itself seemed to pause, streets hushed, televisions flickering blue in dark rooms. Every heart tuned to a single question. Exile, imprisonment, or unbound freedom. 3 paths, none of them right. Yet, Izuku had always walked a fourth. He stood before the gates of UA, the school shining beneath dawn's first uncertain gold. Students and teachers crowded the steps, news drones hovering overhead. At his sides, Bakugo and Todoroki, shoulders squared, faces solemn, not as rivals now, but as the inheritors of something vaster than victory. Aizawa stood a little behind, gaze fierce and unyielding. "You don't owe them anything," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "But you still have a choice." Izuku looked to the crowd, then to the horizon, and felt the weight of all the eyes. The hopes and fears pressed into his very skin. For a heartbeat, he saw every possible path. To leave and vanish from history. To accept a prison of their making and let fear win. To rule unchallenged, becoming the very monster the world dreaded. He refused all three. With a steady breath, he spoke, not loud, but clear, every word carrying across the crowd and through every lens. "I won't run. I won't rule. And I won't let fear decide who I become." He turned to Bakugo and Todoroki, clasping their hands. "You're the future. You're the reason I fought this far. Led them, protect them, and remind them what heroes can mean when power isn't just strength, but trust." A hush swept the crowd, then a low ripple of applause, awkward but growing, the sound of something beginning. Bakugo smirked, a tear cutting through his usual scowl. "Don't make us clean up all your messes, nerd." Todoroki's voice was steady. "We'll watch this world together. You gave it a chance." Izuku nodded once, then stepped back from the gates. Reporters surged, but he was already fading from view, his shadow slipping into the city's morning mist. Days turned to weeks. UA changed. Bakugo and Todoroki led by example, fierce and unbending, yet open. Quirkless students were admitted in greater numbers. Hero studies taught not just combat, but compassion and wisdom. Some said Izuku was sighted on rainy rooftops, watching from above, never interfering. Sometimes, late at night, a problem vanished, a lost child was found, a villain woke paralyzed and harmless. To the world, he became a rumor, a modern myth, a heavenly hero, neither captive nor king, but the standard by which all others were measured. Uraraka, years later, would remember that dawn as the day the world itself seemed to exhale. "He left us with hope," she'd say. And that's something no one can imprison. And in the hush between legend and tomorrow, Midoriya watched, silent, unseen, forever choosing to serve from the shadows. The world, for the first time in generations, felt free to change. Years passed, and UA thrived. The campus rebuilt itself from memory and ambition, its doors open wider than ever before. Halls once reserved for the blessed and powerful now echoed with laughter from every corner of the world. Students with quirks and students without, some marked by scars, all drawn by the myth of a boy who had become more than legend. Bakugo and Todoroki walked the halls as the new era's pillars, one fire, one ice, both steel beneath the surface. Bakugo ruled with ferocity and fairness, his anger burnished into purpose. Todoroki became the still water to Bakugo's flame, mentoring with quiet wisdom, guiding outcasts and prodigies alike. Together, they forged something rare, a hero society no longer chained to fear, but daring enough to learn from it. They didn't speak of Midoriya often. They didn't have to. His presence lingered in every lesson, every choice. Teachers invoked his name not as warning, but as inspiration. What would the heavenly hero do? How do you fight for people who fear you and love them anyway? UA's dorms filled with new faces, quirkless kids in bright uniforms, mutation types with scars on their hearts, children who remembered a time when heroes only came for the strong. They walked these halls unafraid, sharing ghost stories of the green-eyed protector who watched from the rooftops. In the city, adults whispered rumors. A villain found tied up in an alley, untouched but unable to move. A lost child carried home through the rain. a wave of dread passing through would-be criminals before they acted. Heavenly Hero, they called him. Blade of Mercy, the ghost who stands watch. Some tried to track him. None succeeded. Uraraka, now a hero in her own right, sometimes left a lantern on her balcony, hoping to glimpse a shadow at the edge of light. Bakugu, on rough nights, would glance to the sky and mutter, "I know you're out there, Deku." Todoroki trained new students, reminding them, "We're building a world he can be proud of." On graduation day, the new UA headmaster handed each student a simple silver badge, engraved with the school's symbol and a single, hand-etched word, hope. Far above, on a rooftop washed in moonlight, Izuku Midoriya watched the city breathe. The world had moved on, mended and remade, yet he remained, a silent blade against the dark, the echo of every impossible promise. He was not a king, not a god, just a boy who had once dared to choose mercy and found a way to give the world back to itself. And as the night rolled on and the city dreamed, Izuku faded into the shadows, alone, but never apart, the legacy of the blade living in every heart that still believed. And that's a wrap on today's story. What if Deku was Toji Fushigiro's reincarnation? I hope you enjoyed listening it as much as I loved putting it together. If you did, don't forget to smash that like button, drop a comment sharing your thoughts or your own what if ideas, and subscribe if you haven't already. Your support really helps these stories reach even more MHA fans. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Plus Ultra.